Today's story is about Scott Scurlock. To those who knew him, Scott Scurlock was a quiet but likable oddity. Raised by religious parents in Virginia, Scurlock stood out as an intelligent child whose only flaw was stealing. As an adult he moved to Washington State to study medicine. There, he built a huge treehouse and began getting into the drug trade in the Pacific Northwest. Beginning in 1992, Scurlock robbed nearly 20 Seattle-area banks in just 4 years, pocketing about $2.3 million and becoming the most active robber in Washington state in the process. Dubbed the Hollywood Burglar by the FBI, he wore an array of elaborate disguises during his robberies, leaving few clues to his true identity. It wasn't until police officers blocked his getaway car one day in 1996 that Scott Scurlock's lucky escape ended for good. William Scott Scurlock was born in 1955 and grew up in Virginia. His father was a minister in a Baptist church, and his mother was an elementary school teacher. Scurlock was one of 3 children and the only son in the family. Although his family was very religious, Scurlock grew up without boundaries. He was a bright child, but he rarely made an effort in school, and was considered by friends to be charming and free-spirited. In 1974, Scurlock moved to Hawaii to work with his childhood friend, Kevin Myers, on a tomato farm. At one point, Scurlock and Myers stole marijuana plants from a nearby farm and began selling drugs. This process ended when the employer discovered the plant on the floor and the duo were fired. After this mistake, Scurlock enrolled at Evergreen State College in Olympia, Washington as a medical student in 1978, with the goal of correcting himself. This attempt did not last long. Shortly after enrolling, Scurlock apparently began sneaking into the school's chemistry lab to make methamphetamine, which he would sell for a profit. In this he was successful enough to purchase about 20 acres of land where he later built a magnificent 3-story treehouse using lumber stolen from a nearby warehouse. The house had a sun terrace, water pipes, electricity, a heater, and a pole for a rapid descent just like we see in the movies. The house became his base while he ran his illegal drug business. For more than 2 decades, Scurlock continued to sell methamphetamine, becoming a massive drug distributor in the area and using the profits to fund his eccentric lifestyle. In 1990, Scott Scurlock suffered a devastating emotional blow when his drug dealer was murdered. The crime was a powerful shock, and prompted Scurlock to quickly exit the drug trade. Fortunately, he had enough cash reserves buried in his estate to last him until 1992. But he soon realized that he had to find another way to make money. So, he decided to try his luck at robbing banks. Teaming up with his college friend, Mark Biggins, Scurlock robbed his first bank on June 25, 1992. That day, he entered Seafirst Bank in Seattle's Madison Park neighborhood and was disguised with theatrical makeup and a prosthetic nose. Biggins was wearing a Ronald Reagan mask. Without hurting anyone, Scurlock left the bank that day with about $20,000, and a new love of robbing banks. On August 14, 1992, Scurlock returned to the same bank, alone this time, wearing a different disguise. But according to the Secretary of State in Washington, the bank tellers recognized the thief's behavior as having an authoritarian personality. Scurlock left that day with $8,124. Again, no one was harmed. In fact, while Scurlock carried a gun, he never hurt anyone during his numerous robberies. These crimes caught the attention of the FBI, which described Scurlock as a robbery kingpin, due to his intimidating robbery style. In the next 3 months, Scurlock and his accomplices robbed 4 more Seattle banks. The last robbery in this round was at a different Seafirst Bank on November 19, 1992 and netted the group a whopping $252,000. After this crime, the FBI changed Scurlock's name to Hollywood Thief, in reference to his fashion and theatrical behavior. By 1993, Scott Scurlock had earned more than $300,000 from robbing banks. At the same time, he continued to live like a lost child on his strange treehouse property, telling those who asked that his income came from construction or carpentry work. As a nature lover, Scurlock seems to have considered himself a modern-day Robin Hood, donating a large portion of the money he stole to environmental charities. But while Scurlock proved himself as an extraordinarily talented bank robber, the FBI was slowly closing in on him. Investigators examined surveillance footage from the robberies and examined the details of each case. They quickly estimated that Scurlock was spending about $20,000 a month. The dates of the thefts correspond to the times when he was empty-handed. With this information, the FBI began placing agents at banks that the Hollywood thief had robbed in the past with dates that matched his spending habits. They also offered a $50,000 reward for information related to the thief's arrest. In total, Scurlock and his accomplices had stolen more than $1 million from banks by 1995. Nearly 20 bank robberies in 4 years, and it seemed like he had no plans to stop. But Scurlock's profession carried risks that would soon prove fatal to the bank robber. On November 27, 1996, Scurlock planned to rob the Seafirst Bank in Seattle with his accomplices, Paul Myers and Mark Biggins. But when Scurlock entered the bank that day, a trained teller immediately pressed the silent alarm button. The robbers forced bank employees to the ground at gunpoint as they entered the vault and collected the cash. The robbers then exited the bank and walked down the street toward the getaway car. Unfortunately for them, a bank customer was secretly following them and reported their car to 911. Task force officers rushed into the neighborhood, and although Scurlock and his accomplices abandoned the getaway car for a white truck, officers trained to follow suspicious vehicles soon began following the gang. As soon as he felt they were chasing him, Scurlock stopped the truck and did something he had never done before. He pointed his gun with the intention of using it. Shots rang out between the officers and the truck gang. Scurlock got back into the car and tried to escape. Instead, he drove the truck toward a nearby house, and fled on foot. Officers approached the truck and arrested Biggins and Myers, who suffered non-fatal gunshot wounds. The police also recovered the money the gang had stolen, amounting to about $1 million. Soon, Biggins and Myers would admit that Scott Scurlock was the mastermind behind all the robberies. With Scott Scurlock on the run, police established a 6-block cordon around the area where he disappeared. Officers and K-9 units began scouring the area, intending to finally catch the Hollywood thief. The next day, brothers Robert and Ronald Walker were visiting their mother, Wilma Walker, for Thanksgiving dinner at her home 2 blocks from where the truck hit the house. Wilma kept a 30-meter trailer on her property. After learning of the search for the Hollywood thief, the brothers began to suspect that someone might be hiding in the trailer when they noticed that the upper portion of the trailer's window was open. Robert and Ronald turned to the trailer, and noticed someone inside. The brothers called the police, and within minutes, officers surrounded the trailer. Scurlock was inside it. When an officer tried to open the trailer door, a shot rang out from inside, prompting police to shoot her. After securing the area and attempting to communicate with Scurlock, officers forcefully opened the trailer, and found Scott Scurlock's body. It turns out that during the arrest, the Hollywood thief shot himself, leading to his death. The police decided to search Scott Scurlock's property immediately and found a secret underground room filled with cash, costumes and face paint. The police were confident that they had found the wanted person. After the shootout, both Biggins and Myers went to prison for their crimes. At the same time, many of Scurlock's friends and family members were left wondering how he got down this dark path. Friends described Scurlock as a free-spirited hippie who spent most of his time outdoors. Carpentry was his only apparent source of income. Many described him as quiet, handsome, intelligent, kind, and generous, and were amazed that someone like him could have planned so many robberies. "I can't even imagine inside the underworld," Stuart Scurlock, Scurlock's cousin, told the Seattle Times. "He was always calm, peace-loving. I can't imagine anything like this." However, some noticed that Scurlock had pent-up anger which caused him to get into conflicts. "He was the scariest person I ever met," neighbor Greg Smith told the Seattle Times. "I was not surprised to see the police outside his house yesterday morning. When you see someone in that angry state, you know that one day something was bound to happen." With many conflicting confessions about the character of a thief, don't forget to like and subscribe.